Why 70 to 75 is the hardest chapter, and how to survive it. Something satisfying happened in your late 60s. You looked around at other people your age, the ones shuffling through parking lots, the ones gripping handrails like lifelines, and you quietly thought to yourself, that is not going to be me. And you had every reason to believe it. You watched what you ate. You stayed active. Maybe you walked every morning or kept up a gym routine or prided yourself on never missing a day of yard work. Your doctor said your numbers looked good. Your kids said you looked 10 years younger than your age. And honestly, you felt it. Retirement was not the ending everyone warned you about. It was a second wind. You traveled. You slept in on Mondays without guilt. You finally had time to read, to breathe, to be. So if someone had sat you down at 68 and told you that the hardest chapter of your entire life was still ahead of you, not behind you, you would have laughed. But here is what nobody prepares you for. The hardest transition does not happen when you leave your career. It does not happen when your last child moves out. It does not happen at 60 or 65. It happens somewhere between 70 and 75. Quietly, without announcement. And it blindsides almost everyone, including the people who swore it would never happen to them. Today, we are going to talk about why that window is so uniquely brutal, and more importantly, we are going to walk through a Stoic framework that does not just help you survive it, but lets you graduate through it. The first few years of retirement often feel like an extended vacation. You are still coasting on the momentum of your working years. Your identity is intact, your stamina is reliable. And then, somewhere around 70, the ground shifts. It is not usually a massive medical crisis that breaks your spirit. It is the micro-betrayals of the body. It is the private humiliation of a former executive, quietly asking their adult child to open a bottle of water. It is the realization that a walk you have taken 1,000 times now requires a day of recovery. It is the sudden, jarring feeling that your family is quietly working around you. Your daughter insisting she drive. Your son taking the grocery bags out of your hands. Before you can even protest, you realize you are no longer in control of the vehicle. It is driving you. This is where the psychological weight hits. For 50 years, your worth was tied to what you produced. You were the provider, the manager, the parent who fixed everything, the one people relied on. Society trained you to believe that your value was equal to your stamina. Developmental psychologist Erik Erikson called this exact stage the battle between ego integrity and despair. Despair comes from desperately clinging to the person you used to be, grieving the loss of your physical dominance. But integrity is finding peace with the life you have lived and the reality of where you are now. When the Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught what is known as the dichotomy of control, he built it on a very simple premise. We suffer not from the events of our lives, but from our judgments about them. Your body slowing down is a biological event. It is out of your control. But the belief that you are useless because you are slower, that is a judgment. And it is a false one. You are grieving the loss of the doer. But what if you stopped looking at this shift as a decline and started treating it as a graduation? You are no longer required to physically conquer the world. That exhausting, endless performance is over. You have put in your time. Letting go of the need to be constantly useful is not a surrender. It is the ultimate form of self-respect. And as you are grappling with this changing identity, something else happens. Your circle begins to shrink. The casual phone calls stop coming as often. A casual "see you next week" with an old friend quietly becomes the last time you ever see them. You find yourself spending days at a time in a quiet house, wondering if you have simply been forgotten. It is easy to view this shrinking world as a tragedy, but in his letters on the shortness of life, the Stoic philosopher Seneca reminded us that we waste so much of our precious time trying to please people who do not truly matter to us. When your circle shrinks, you are finally given permission to stop people-pleasing. The ancient Stoics practiced something called memento mori, meditating on their own mortality. They did not do this to be depressed or morbid. They did it to clarify what was actually important, quickly stripping away the superficial noise of the world. The silence of a smaller circle is not isolation, it is curation. The people who remain are the ones who matter. The long gaps between phone calls, the quiet morning with a cup of coffee and nowhere to be, these are not the leftovers of a rich life. They are the distillation of it. In his private journal, The Meditations, Marcus Aurelius wrote near the end of his own life that everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact, and everything we see is a perspective, not the truth. The perspective you have been handed by a culture obsessed with youth, productivity, and speed is that this chapter is a loss. But the fact, the one you can feel if you sit with it quietly enough, is that this chapter is the first time in your life when you are not performing for anyone. You have nothing left to prove, no quarterly review, no one to impress, no reputation to protect. You are, perhaps for the very first time, free. That does not mean it is easy. Freedom rarely is, especially when it arrives wearing a disguise that looks like loss. But the men and women who navigate this window with grace are not the ones who fight it. They are the ones who recognize what it actually is. A door, not a wall. An invitation, not a sentence. If anything in this resonated with you, if it names something you have been feeling but could not quite articulate, then you are already further along than you think. This is what we explore here on Golden Years, the quiet truths about this stage of life that no one else seems willing to say out loud. If you would like to continue this conversation, subscribe, and we will be here whenever you are ready.